Right, so welcome to tour number 9. The theme of this tour is Keep Your Eyes on the Prize. Right, so you know all about it anyway. Really all we're going to do in this tour is have a look at 2 illustrations that are used throughout the Christian Greek scriptures, and obviously taken from everyday life in the 1st century. But using this room, hopefully we can get a bit of an insight into these illustrations. So if you'd just like to open your Bibles, we'll have a look at the illustrations. They're in 2 Timothy chapter 2. So 2 Timothy chapter 2. And not doing too badly with Bibles. Right, so we're going to read verses 3 and 4 to begin with. So 2 Timothy chapter 2 verses 3 and 4. Okay, there it says, "As a fine soldier of Christ Jesus, take your part in suffering evil. No man serving as a soldier involves himself in the commercial businesses of life in order that he may gain the approval of the one who enrolled him as a soldier." So there's our first illustration. Keep your Bibles open, but our first illustration is, of course, the soldier. So what prize would the soldier have his eyes on, and what would he have to do in order to get his prize? Well, that's what we're going to look at in this talk. But whilst we're there, Paul switches. So the next verse, he uses the other illustration that we're going to be dealing with. So let's go down to verse 5, where Paul says, "Moreover, if anyone contends, even in the games, he is not crowned unless he's contended according to the rules." So who would you find contending in the games? It would be an athlete. Very good. So we then, as Christians, we need to be soldiers and athletes. Okay, this might be bad news for some of you, judging by how you did on those stairs. But the athlete then, what prize would he have his eyes on? How would he get that prize? Okay, so that's what we're going to be looking at on this tour. Shall we start with our soldier? Here we are looking at a soldier. And a Roman soldier would be signed up for a period of 25 years. Okay, so at the end of their 25 years of service, they would receive an honourable discharge from the army. And just imagine what that would be like. Can you imagine the contrast? I mean, obviously, whilst they're serving as a soldier, it's a very dangerous life, of course, a very tough life, lots of discomfort and marches and so on, all that stuff with all their gear. Very, very hard life. And then when they retire, things are very different, aren't they? First of all, of course, they have a share in the spoils, so you can imagine them having a very comfortable place to live, obviously safe, prestige, honour, wealth, all of that sort of thing. So can you imagine the contrast from serving in the army to your retirement? So can you think the soldiers would have their eyes on that prize just to keep themselves going? Yes, you can imagine, can't you? A soldier on one of those long, hard marches along those Roman roads with all his gear, pouring rain. You can imagine him thinking, only 24 years, 364 days to go. But he'd have his eyes on that prize, wouldn't he? Now, the Roman army were actually quite happy to use people who were not Romans. They would go into the army as well if they wanted to. In actual fact, they had an extra prize. So if you just come around the corner, you'll see what the prize was. Okay. Please make sure our sisters can see. Right, and all of you will need to come a bit closer together as well. You know, we talk about a warm international brotherhood. Close. Please prove it. Right, so these little bronze plates here are actually, would you believe, certificates. They are certificates of citizenship. And you see the idea then. If the soldier was not a Roman citizen, after serving his 25 years, he would be made a Roman citizen. Was that a big deal in the first century?
Yes.
Yeah, why was it useful to be a Roman citizen, sister?
Well, I know that if you were a Roman citizen, it was very prestigious. You were granted many things that the person wouldn't do.
Excellent. Yeah, so first of all, the prestige. This is the world power. Sister?
And to use the court system because Paul wanted to go to the courts because he was a Roman
Excellent.
citizen.
Yeah, so he had that right, didn't he? That right of appeal that came from his Roman citizenship.
Couldn't be beaten in public.
Yes, do you remember that account when they had Paul stretched out? They were just about to give him a good thrashing. And Paul just asked a little question, didn't he? He said, is it lawful for you to do this to a Roman citizen? They had to stop, didn't they? They dared touch him. So very, very handy, and not to mention prestigious. So, oh, by the way, there's also tax advantages. I forgot about that. Don't forget the tax advantages. They're very handy as well. Now, I'm going to just test your Bible knowledge now, just to make sure you are really Bible students. There was one city in the first century where the whole city had been granted a special form of Roman citizenship. And when Paul wrote his letter to the congregation there, now that sounds like a pretty good clue. Paul wrote his letter to the congregation in that city. He said to them, as for us, our citizenship exists in the heavens. And he also said to them, behave as a citizen of the good news, if you have a look at your interlinear version. So of course that city was?
Philippi.
Philippi. Well done. Excellent. That's very good. Very impressed. Well done. You usually have to go through the whole list, eliminating them. But yeah, so you can understand how they'd be proud of this in the first century. And of course Paul was getting them to think in the same terms, especially of course the anointed, of their Christian citizenship. It's a bit quiet, we'll keep going. Right, now, let me just go back to that soldier then. The soldier who's got his eyes on the prize. So can you imagine the battle raging all around, but the soldier is thinking about his lovely villa that he's going to have when he retires. And he's thinking about, well, what colour should I have the walls? And I wonder what mosaic I'll have on the floor. What furniture I'll have in my villa. Is that a good idea? Whilst the battle's going on all around him? No, it's great that he's got his eyes on the prize, but to get his prize, obviously he's got to make sure that he lives long enough. So it's not just that, he's got to stay alive, hasn't he, to get his prize. And of course what the soldier would need to stay alive, we see just down here, would need his armour. And as you can see, this is Greek armour. And the Greek soldier, when he signed up, would be expected to go out and buy all of his own armour. Can you imagine? Quite an expense. The Roman soldier was in a better position. He'd be issued his armour free of charge. However, whose job do you think it was to look after the armour? Both in the Greek army and in the Roman. Who looks after the armour?
The soldier.
The soldier, yeah. Now why would he be interested in that?
Protect them.
It's his life, isn't it? That's right. So, yeah, so if you were a soldier in either army, you'd be fairly interested in your armour, wouldn't you? Make sure it's in good condition. So that sounds like there could be a good illustration here. And of course we know there is, don't we? So where would you find the complete suit of armour in the Bible?
Ephesians 6.
Ephesians chapter 6. Very good. Okay. And just turn to that. But whilst you're turning, of course we do remember it does say, doesn't it, the complete suit of armour. And did you notice how even the toes are protected, right the way down to the toes? But we're not going to look at too much of this at the moment. You're going to tell me all about it later on. But we're just going to pick out one verse here in Ephesians 6. And let's have a look there at verse 16. It says there, above all things, take up the large shield of faith, with which you'll be able to quench all the wicked one's burning missiles. So we have a look at the soldier here, and you see he's got a nice big round shield here. Is this what Paul's talking about? This large shield?
No.
No? Why not?
It's not big enough.
A large shield that the whole body could go behind.
Ah, excellent. Okay, how do you know it's talking about the Roman shield? Okay, well,
History Channel.
I would. Interestingly, the Greek word used in this verse is the word, how I pronounce it, I'm sure if you meet a Greek brother he would pronounce it slightly differently, but the word therios. But the significant thing about that is it's a word for door. For door. So if you've got a mental image of a nice door, that's what he's talking about. So obviously, as you quite rightly say, this Greek shield is too small. The Roman shield is bigger than this, and it's rectangular, which looks more like a door as well. So from the ground, the shield might come up to his waist or to his thigh, but certainly bigger than this. So that's what Paul's talking about, a large shield. The New World Translation, trying to get that accuracy, doesn't just say the shield, it's the large shield. Now, why would you want a large shield? Why would the soldier want a large shield? Well, it says there, with which you'll be able to quench all the wicked ones' burning missiles. Over here we have arrow and spearheads. And they found that many of those arrowheads, they would be little hollows. And the soldiers would dip the arrows in naphtha, set that alight, and shoot that with a slack bow. So the soldiers would literally be facing burning missiles. Very deadly, of course. Another Greek word, the Greek word for bow and arrow, is toxon. Does that sound slightly familiar?
Yeah.
Toxic, yes. Obviously, some of them were dipped in fire, naphtha, some of them were dipped in poison. So if you were going into battle, you would know that you would be facing poisoned or burning missiles. So what kind of shield would you like?
Strong.
Large, yeah. Nice, large, strong one. So just thinking about the Roman shield again then. As we said, the shields were issued free of charge to the individual soldiers. So if they were made out of metal, they would be too heavy, but also too expensive. So they weren't made out of metal. The Roman shield was made out of
Leather. No?
most of it
Wood?
was, yeah, so you'd have a wooden frame, perhaps a metal centerpiece, or even a ceramic centerpiece for the soldiers to hold on to. But as Sister says, most of the area of it was leather. And that's great, isn't it? So it's nice and light, comparatively cheap, and of course the missiles would just be easily deflected by the leather. But what do you think if you had a shield made out of leather in a hot, dry climate like the Middle East? What do you think would happen to that before too long? That's right, dry out, it would crack, and then these missiles
They burn right through
straight
it.
through. Yeah, it's okay. So what does that mean for the soldier? Just thinking about that.
Oil your shield?
Yeah. You see the point? The soldier would need to maintain his shield, whether it's oil or whatever he's doing, every day. Wouldn't the soldier, wouldn't you, if you were a soldier? Check your shield, make sure it's in good condition, make sure it'll deflect those missiles. See what a brilliant illustration. It's not just a case of going out and getting the suit of armour, but once you've got it,
Gotta maintain it.
every day you've got to maintain it, check it, get it in good condition. How about our faith and our shield of faith? Every day we need to check it, don't we? It's not a case of saying, well, I'm baptized, that's it. You know, no worries. No, every day check your faith. Is it in good condition? If not, do something about it. Our life depends on it. So what a brilliant illustration. Let's just have a look at the other bits. Just briefly, some here. We've got the breastplate. So Paul refers to the breastplate of righteousness. And these helmets are good. The helmet of salvation. Or Paul uses the same illustration at Thessalonians, and he says, where is the helmet the hope of salvation? So really the helmet is like our keeping our eyes on the prize, isn't it? So this helmet's really good. What's it made out of?
Metal?
Yeah, so it's bronze, it's metal, and it's brilliant, isn't it? Because it covers pretty well the whole head. So it'd be really great going to battle with one of those, wouldn't it? I mean, an arrow hits your helmet, it might be a bit noisy, you might have a bit of a clang, but basically you're fine, aren't you? So it'd be great, wouldn't it, to wear that helmet? Did you mention it? Really good, wouldn't it? Your whole head being covered, encased in metal, in the heat of day, in the Middle East, that'd be really great, wouldn't it? Whole head in metal, be fantastic. What would it be like inside your helmet, do you think? It'd be incredibly sweaty and not very comfortable, isn't it? Could you imagine a soldier thinking, just to take this thing off for a moment? Wonderful that would be. Should he do it? No, he must keep his helmet on. In other words, he must keep his eyes on the prize. So for us, that's the application, isn't it? Keep our hope in sight. Otherwise, we'll be like a soldier who's taken his helmet off. In fact, we'd become like these people. So if we don't block the corridor. But here, all we want to think about for the moment is we've got these two gladiators here. How many are going to walk away from this contest?
One.
One. Okay, so all other things being equal, what are their chances?
50-50.
50-50, isn't it? But then, of course, the winner goes into another contest. And if they win that, another contest. And if they win that, and so on. So overall, what is their hope like? Well, pretty sort of slim, isn't it? In fact, before the game started, before the contest started, these gladiators, they would raise their hands towards Caesar, and they would say, "Hail Caesar, those about to die salute you." So what was their hope? Well, they didn't have any, did they? They just expected to die. But how would that affect them? Well, one thing they were allowed to do the night before their contest was to have a good party, have their friends, have their family over, and basically it was a goodbye party, because they expected not to survive the next day. So can you see what their thinking was there? Let us
Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die.
Isn't that interesting? So that's really the thinking of the gladiators. Well, really, because it's the thinking of hopelessness, isn't it? Now, what about the world around us? I know we're from all different parts of the globe here, but it's very common, isn't it?
Yes.
To have people around us who've got pretty well the same attitude, the live for today attitude, because they have no hope. So if we took our eyes off the prize, wouldn't we be just the same? Without our hope, we would do the same thing. So let's not be like that. Rather, keep our eyes fixed on the prize, and then we're not going to live for today, as so many do. Let's go now to our other illustration, that of the athletes. And just hopefully you can see these urns here at the back, and what they're depicting. Here we have the Greeks, again, of course, with their real love of sport. But we're interested in this running race. Can you see there from the end at the back there, the runners? Okay, so now using your powers of observation, what would you say? Is that a long distance race that they're in, a sort of marathon type affair, or a short distance sprint? See how good you are on your anatomy and so on.
That's a short one.
Short. So Sister here thinks a short distance race. You agree with her brother? Very good. Nobody else seems to be rushing to agree with you, so it looks like it's just two of you. Does that mean everybody else thinks it's long distance? You say long distance, would you?
Okay, I thought long distance.
Long distance, very good. Okay. Well, of course, you're right. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Look at their posture. They're quite upright, aren't they? Their arms are quite low, so that would tend to suggest a long marathon-type race. I suppose for a short sprint, they'd be crouched down, perhaps. Anyway, who knows? The museums say it's long distance as well, so maybe your powers of observation went to reading the label. Makes it a lot easier. Anyway, okay, so there's the runners there, so we worked them out in the end. Now, of course, this big one in the centre here, obviously, can you see some sort of horse riding event going on there? But the one in the back here, I'm going to talk about now, and it's a bit difficult to see, so just to explain, you've got the guy in the front, if you just about to see that, he's got a long, sharp pole that he's throwing, so he would be javelin, excellent. The guy behind him, he's got a flat, heavy, round thing. Discus, very good. There's another javelin thrower behind him. And then right in the corner there, there's a man with heavy stone weight in his hand. Shotwood? No, not shotwood. I misled you slightly. Actually, he's got one in each hand. Heavy stone weight, one in each hand.
Weightlifting?
Weightlifting? No.
No. I'm not saying anything else.
He's not the weightlifter. He's the jumper.
Jumper? Oh.
Yeah, so that's what they would do. They'd get these heavy stones. They'd have a really good runner, and then as they leave the ground, they would throw the stones behind them, and they thought that would give them extra lift. Okay, look, it's not my idea, it's these Greeks, okay? So take it up with them. So over here you can see we've got here a jumping weight.
Oh, interesting.
Right, so you didn't do very well on the sports. Let's come back to our runners then. Now, how do we know that this is the day of the race and that they're not training? Because they used to have very long, intense training programs, perhaps 10 months, solidly working out and training and so on. But this is not training, this is the day of the race, and we know that because they are naked. Okay? So, obviously, training, they would have their clothes on, but in addition to that, they would also have their lead weights attached to their legs and to their arms and so on, and that would really build up their strength, build up their stamina. But on the day of the race, of course, the weights would come off, the clothes would come off, and then they could do their very, very best. And of course, you've all thought of the scripture, but let's just have a look at that in Hebrews chapter 12. So we have to be the same as Christians. But can I ask you just to keep the clothes on just for a moment?
Oh, thank goodness.
So Hebrews chapter 12, and just have a look at verse 1. but hopefully now you've got this image in mind, you can see exactly what Paul is talking about. Here he says, "So then, because we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also put off every weight and the sin that easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." So, you see the point. We as Christians are like these. We're in a race. We're not training. This is it. We've got to run now this long-distance endurance race. So that's a really good illustration. Let's just stick with that a bit longer. Now, I know we've got brothers and sisters here from all around the world, but I'm sure you've heard of the London Marathon. Okay? If you haven't, there's one in New York. Do they have it in Slovenia? Marathon? Yeah, bound to have, aren't they? Boston has one, isn't it?
Yes.
Right, so plenty of marathons. We're going to talk about the London Marathon for a moment. Okay? So, can you see yourself there in the London Marathon? Getting ready to start? Can't you see yourself there? No?
I could see myself getting ready to start.
Oh, right.
Where it begins and ends.
Well, this year, I think there was something like 35,000 people that started the London Marathon.
Wow.
Okay. Now, just before we start talking about that too much, just your guess is as good as mine. How many of that 35,000 do you think would have a realistic chance of actually winning?
5, 10.
Yeah, you're sort of talking about a handful, aren't you? Just sort of like, perhaps top 10 or so of the world's top runners. One of them's going to win, isn't it? So that must mean the vast majority of that 35,000 know for a fact they're not going to win. So what are they trying to do then if they're not going to win? Finish, yeah. So that's a bit like us as Christians as well, isn't it? Because we're not going to get the prize for winning, are we? Because that's already gone. Jesus already got that prize. So we're not going to win, but what do we want to do? Finish, yeah. So London Marathon is a brilliant illustration. So you really got to see yourself there now, don't you? Running that marathon. Okay. So can you just imagine yourself there in London Marathon? Now it all starts off very nice and easy, Greenwich Park and around there, some of the nice parts of London. And then we're just going to pretend, it doesn't actually go this way, but we're just going to pretend for a moment. The London Marathon comes up Oxford Street. Now, in case you don't know, Oxford Street is where they've got all the lovely shops, the department stores, the clothes shops, the shoe stores. And so could you imagine yourself doing a little running in your marathon and keeping your eyes on the shop windows and thinking, oh, look at that, and whipping there, and I don't have that at home where I come from, and down there, buy some stuff, and that goes under that arm, and carry on running. Look at those shoes, they're lovely. Go and buy those, go under the other arm, carry on running. Could you see yourself doing that? And then round the corner into Tottenham Court Road, which in case you don't know is where all the gadget shops are. All the hi-fi gear and the computer gear and all those little gadgets that some of us love so much. So could you imagine doing the same running? Oh, look at that gadget, isn't that brilliant? Wow, look what that does. Would you go into the shop, buy that, carry on running in your marathon? What's going to happen if you're doing that?
Slow down.
You're going to slow down and eventually you're going to stop. Or you're going to be so busy looking at the windows, you're going to trip up and end flat on your face, and that will be the end of your marathon, isn't it? So it's not going to work, is it? What we need to do, of course, is to keep our eyes
On the finish line.
on the prize. Keep our eyes straight ahead. Then we will finish. Do you think sometimes as Christians we tend to do that in our race? Weigh ourselves down with all these material goods? Not needed, is it? Really? Keep our eyes on the prize. Now, prize. Just talking about prizes. These guys, what's the prize that they're hoping to get? The winner of this one is going to get a wonderful prize of a wreath of keep
Laurel.
going. Laurel, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so a bunch of old leaves to put in your hair. That's worth all of that effort, isn't it?
Isn't it a pension? A pension.
Just a bunch of old leaves. But that's only in some places. There's a place called Nemea where they had a different prize. None of your old leaf rubbish. They had a lovely prize there of wild celery.
Wild celery?
Celery, yes. So can you imagine that? They'd be holding up the celery at the finishing line. And these runners would all have their eyes fixed on that celery. Was it worth it? Well, depends how you feel about celery, isn't it? But I wonder how that compares with us as Christians. Should we just have a look at 1 Corinthians chapter 9? And we'll see wild celery mentioned in the Bible here. Well, sort of. So 1 Corinthians chapter 9. Okay, and keep your Bibles open here because we'll look at a few verses from here as well. So 1 Corinthians chapter 9, you must have got that, says there in verse 24, do you not know that the runners in a race all run, but only one receives a prize? Run in such a way that you may attain it. Moreover, every man taking part in a contest exercises self-control in all things. Now they of course do it that they may get a corruptible crown of wild celery. But we an incorruptible one of what? Everlasting life. So that's a bit different, isn't it, to, horrible old vegetable, isn't it? Everlasting life. Yeah, how is that going to affect us? How should it affect us? Well, let's see how it affected Paul. Let's go on to the next verse then. Verse 26. Therefore, the way I am running is not uncertainly. But now it seems that he switches sport. I wonder what sport he goes to now. He says, the way I'm directing my blows is so as not to be striking the air. Boxing? Well, a Christian wouldn't be involved with boxing, would he? It does sort of sound a bit like boxing though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So what do you think about this then? Our sister's theory here. The Apostle Paul in boxing. Who would have thought it? Well, keep your Bibles open. Let's just go learn a bit more about this boxing business.
Excuse me, I'm short.
Everybody see? You're okay, got the shorter ones in the front. So obviously this boxer's not very good, he's been defeated already. But this is the first century boxing, the sort of thing that our sister was on about. Okay? Now, do they seem to have those big padded boxing gloves that you see people using today? No boxing gloves like you see today, but they have got something on their fists, haven't they? What the museum says that actually what they've done is they've got great big balls of lead in their fists, which are then strapped in, and then they're smashing each other.
Oh my goodness.
Basically bare knuckle, but with fists full of lead. And the museum says they would be able to give a brutal blow. So this is what first century boxing is all about. But hang on a second, this is what our sister thinks the Apostle Paul is involved in. Well, let's just see if that is the case. Let's have a look at verse 27, the next verse. He carries on and he says, but I pummel. So actually our sister's absolutely right. Of course the Apostle Paul says he's involved in boxing, and that word pummel means to hit under the eye. So the soft bit under the eye being smashed in with a fistful of lead is what the Apostle Paul is talking about. So it's all very brutal and vicious, and doesn't sound Christian at all. Who is he beating up? Well, I think you know how it carries on, but I pummel who? My body, and lead it as a slave, that after I preach to others, I myself should not become disapproved somehow. So who's he beating up? Himself. And has been very, very brutal with himself. So what do we learn from this then? Well, obviously what we learn is that the Apostle Paul was a very wicked chap, wasn't he? Very, very bad guy. Thoroughly wicked chap, and he had to be so brutal with himself. So we're glad we're so much better than he was, aren't we? So we don't have to worry about this ourselves, but just him who was so bad. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Well, not really. I mean, after all, he was anointed. He was one of the governing body. He was the apostle to the nations, wasn't he? So he was used pretty extensively, and yet he had to be that brutal with himself. So how about us? Do we need to be brutal with ourselves? Yeah. Okay. So now I don't want you to answer the next question or two out loud, but just have a little think about how your fight is going. Your contest. Are you being brutal with yourself? Am I being brutal with myself? You know, that sort of situation when you've got that, you wake up on a Saturday morning and your spiritual side is saying, let's leap out of bed, go do a couple of hours of street work, then I'll get down to the group and do good days in the ministry, finish up, doing some business territory. So that's what your spiritual side is saying. And your fleshly side, might be thinking about the way that it's tipping down with rain and it's freezing cold, and yet in bed, of course, it's all quite comfortable, isn't it? Warm. And your physical side is just saying, no one's going to listen to us, and I don't expect anybody else to be out of the group, and I don't really like that territory we're working at the moment, and So who's winning that battle most of the time? Don't answer out loud. This is one you've got to think about. You don't want any confessions out loud. Unless you want us to get a couple of other albums together. But that's the fight that we all have, isn't it? But the point is it worth it?
Oh, yes.
Wow, it's a prize, isn't it? I mean, Paul thought it was worth being brutal with himself, so he wouldn't miss out on that wonderful prize. I mean, these guys are doing it for their salary. But for us, everlasting life. Then that is worth it, isn't it? So keep up the fight and keep going as far as that's concerned. What we're going to do now is just think about those burning missiles again. Remember they said the soldier would face those poisoned or burning missiles? Well, we as Christians face a number of them. We're going to look at 3 of them. The first one illustrated just back down here with the gladiators. So just down here. So this building over here, it isn't, but it might remind you of which building? The Colosseum. Okay, so that's what I was hoping you would say. It's not the Colosseum, but we're going to pretend. And the Colosseum held 50,000 spectators. And if you were a Roman citizen, one of your perks was to be able to come into the Colosseum free of charge and enjoy the spectacle. And by the way, I'm told that underneath the seats here, they had running water, which was perfumed. So it's like early air conditioning. So you could go and sit there in a nice, pleasant environment and free of charge, watch the spectacle. Well, the games would start, the contest would start with a special type of gladiator known as the bestiari. And as you can imagine, they fought animals. And so before long, you probably had the sand here running with the blood of any of the bestiari who didn't get out of the way quick enough, and of course many of the animals that would be killed. But that's not really what the people are here for. They're for the gladiators proper. So just looking over here, we can see lots of different types of gladiators, different sorts of equipment that they would be trained in. The gladiators themselves, they would come from perhaps condemned criminals or runaway slaves, although apparently there were 1 or 2 volunteers as well, perhaps people who were just a little bit desperate. So, let's just end it all in a blaze of glory in the arena. So they'd be trained up with their equipment, and then the day of the contest would come. According to one reference book I was looking at, using an interesting expression, it says sometimes the trainers would have to encourage the gladiators into the arena using whips and red-hot pokers just to get them out there to fight. Okay, so interesting use of the word encourage. But anyway, of course, they're getting their contest. They would try to do their very best until one of them drops to the ground injured. He would try, if he could, to raise his hand as an appeal to the crowd. And it seems that the crowd liked him, liked the way he fought, and so on. They might wave a piece of material or perhaps even give him the thumbs up. Although I know there's different versions to this. If you've got a different version, then that's it. But if they didn't like him, the crowd might give him the thumbs down, which would be let him die. And then whilst you have sort of thousands and thousands here screaming for his life, his opponents would put him to death for an entertainment. So this was a normal practice. This is a normal entertainment in the 1st century. Would you have been there to watch this, to enjoy this nice spectacle? A lot of you are saying no. Can I just remind you, you wouldn't have to pay to get in. It's free to get in. If you're a Roman citizen, would you be there?
No.
Could you imagine the elders in your congregation there?
No.
It's funny, if you were always quicker to say they wouldn't be there, then they couldn't imagine their elders there. Interesting, that. Anyway, it's not really for Christians, is it? In fact, underneath the stadium there's a little room called the Spolarium. And if they weren't quite killed in the arena, they'd be finished off in the Spolarium. So that's the sort of entertainment that they had in the 1st century. So aren't you glad there's nothing like this today? We don't have any entertainment like this today, do we? So
Sure
that's
we do.
good. Or do we?
We do.
Yeah? What do we have like this today then?
Movies.
Movies, films,
Video
TV,
games.
video games are very, very violent, aren't they? Yeah, so actually, we do have just as much, don't we, unholy entertainment surrounding us all the time. So if we said that we wouldn't be here in the 1st century, what does that mean about our choices of entertainment? Well, obviously we need to be selective. So this unholy entertainment could be like a burning poisonous missile which we could let into our homes if we're not careful. And we want to not tune into that, but tune into the channel which is showing us that wonderful new world. In fact, you just have a look at the scale of this. Over here it talks about one exceptional show which lasted 117 days, it says, with 5,000 pairs of gladiators. So that's quite shocking, isn't it? But let's just think about that. How many at least would have died? 5,000 pairs of gladiators. At least 5,000, but probably actually more like 10, wasn't it? So that's pretty awful, isn't it? But if you were to watch TV solidly for 117 days, how many people do you think you'd see being put to death?
Probably more than that.
I think 5,000, 10,000 would be nothing in comparison, wouldn't it? So, you know, things are just as bad today, isn't it? Entertainment. So, this is like a burning missile, unholy entertainment. But as we said, our protection is not to tune into that sort of entertainment, but tune into the channel showing us the new world. In other words, keep our eyes on the prize. So missile number 2 is even more deadly. In fact, it's the most deadly. Let's have a look at that missile at the top of the room. He's priceless. So let's come a bit closer though, so you can all see this little exhibit over here. So let me try to squeeze in behind your brothers and sisters. Right, so looking at this terracotta figurine, this shows the goddess Aphrodite. So she's the goddess of what? Aphrodite is goddess of love. Okay, that's right. And the centre of her worship was in Corinth. There's a huge temple in her honour in Corinth. Now we know that the Greeks had 4 words at least for our English word love. Which variety was she in charge of? Maybe you can tell from how she's dressed here. That's right, she's a goddess of sexual or erotic love. So as we say, her temple based in Corinth, be a great attraction for people to travel to Corinth. What effect do you think that had on the morals of that city in Corinth? Worshipping this goddess of sexual love. Well, it was so bad that even in the world of the 1st century, to be grossly immoral was known as to Corinthianize. The city was synonymous with immorality, or a Corinthian girl was one with a reputation for immorality. So, just imagine that environment of immorality. How could Christians survive in that? In a way that's acceptable to Jehovah, holy, pure. Could that happen?
Only if they kept their eyes on the purpose.
Excellent. Yeah. And we know it did happen because Paul wrote to the congregation there, didn't he? And he actually listed some of the immoral practices there, and he says that is what some of you were. So somehow they had changed, they were different, they were protecting themselves from this burning missile of immorality. But it was tough, wasn't it? In that environment. How did they do it? Well, as Sister mentioned, by keeping their eyes on the prize. How about today? Would you say we're in an environment of immorality in the world today? It's not really any particular place like Corinth, it's like the whole world now, isn't it? Wherever you go, you're surrounded even through advertising and the people even that we're with, the ones at school or at work or so on. You know, immorality is in fact, what's viewed as wrong, they now view as right, and it's wrong to say that it's wrong. So I'll work out that sentence and tell it again later on. Anyway, so that's the world just like Corinth, isn't it? But a member of the governing body once said this. He said, just remember what Jehovah offers you. Jehovah offers you an opportunity to live as long as he lives. So you can live as long as God lives. Is it worth giving that up for a moment's immoral pleasure? We keep that thought in mind, that perspective in mind, that will help us to resist or protect ourselves from this burning missile of immorality. So what was missile number 1?
Violence.
Yeah, okay.
Entertainment.
Unholy entertainment. Should we call it unholy entertainment? Missile number 2? Immorality. Now missile number 3 is so deadly, it even struck one of Jesus' apostles. So I wonder what that could be. Let's go have a look down here. Okay, so nice and close together. Cuddle in, be friendly. Right, okay, now, before we get stuck into talking about this, just a little bit of background information. Easy stuff to you, especially after your tour this morning. roughly, to the nearest 100 years or so, how long were the Greeks around? Were the Greeks the world power and dominating the Middle East, Israel? To sort of 300 years, that's right, yeah. So you're talking about Alexander up to... But even in the time of the Romans, of course, in the first century, the Greek influence was still very strong, wasn't it? I mean, what language did they write the Christian Greek scriptures in? So that influence is still very much around there, wasn't it? So let's just think about the implications of that. What did the Greeks love? Well, we saw earlier on, they love their sports, don't they, their athletics. So into every city they go and colonize, they build a stadium and they start the games going, get the sports going. And before long, they're dishing out wild celery like there's no tomorrow. Okay? Now, what do you think the Jews, the Hebrew men, are going to think about all of this? Well, you can imagine them, can't you? To begin with, they're not going to get involved in any of this, pagan rubbish. They don't have anything to do with it. But 300 years is a long, long time, isn't it? And as time went on, what could you imagine happening? Could you imagine some of the Jewish men thinking, I could do something then. I could get myself some wonderful wild celery. Or maybe they would be thinking, run fast on those Greek guys, show them that we are a force to be reckoned with. They think they're so wonderful, dominating everywhere. So, could you imagine that they might want to join in? Now, could they join in? Were they allowed to? Well, as far as the Greeks were concerned, fine, no problem whatsoever. So they would go in, and many of them did this, they went in, they went through all the training, that long, intense training program, that was all fine. However, the day of the race came, and then things went badly wrong for them. Because what happens on the day of the race? Remember, the weights come off, the
Clothes come off.
clothes come off, and the Jewish men are circumcised. And their circumcision made them the object of such ridicule and abuse that it prevented them, in effect, joining in the games. So when you get back home, what I'd like you to do, if you've got it in your language, is to have a look at your insight book under the heading Circumcision. And it'll show you there what a number of these Jewish men did. In order to join in the games, they went through an extremely dangerous and very, very painful operation to seemingly reverse their circumcision. And that's why I'm bringing you here to have a look at these medical implements of the first century. So during this operation, many would have died. Those who survived would have been in pain for the rest of their lives. But they did all of that. Why? Why really did they go through all that? I mean, they would have known those risks, but what were they trying to do?
Acknowledgement would be one thing. They want to
That's right.
Yeah, and it's fitting in, isn't it? That's it. They're trying to be just like everybody else. In fact, really, you could say they were struck with fear of man. And it drove them to such great lengths. Which one of Jesus' apostles was hit by that burning missile? Peter, yes, he was hit 3 times, wasn't he? Now, fortunately for him, it wasn't fatal, but did it hurt? He went bitterly, didn't he? That's how it went bitterly. So, it's a very, very painful burning missile, this one. So how can we protect ourselves from this burning missile of fear of man? Well, there's a couple of real danger situations, isn't it? Now, I think we might have missed it for this group, but it could be going to a new school. No, I think we've had that. Or a new job, perhaps. Or new neighbours. Perhaps even relatives or something who've just come across our family. Something like that. What do? Do you go and introduce yourself? So, my name's so-and-so, and this is what I believe about the future. Give them a good witness. Paradise, earth, all of that, day one. Or, plan B, is to not mention the fact that you're a witness, isn't it? That's the other way of doing it. And just perhaps wait for it to come out later on. Perhaps when we think it's a more sort of, natural spot. And that's fine. You can, make your own minds up on that. But what can be the problem with plan B, with the not mentioning it situation?
one's conscience might be affected after the fact, that they didn't, in fact, say something.
Yeah. And you might have a little issue come along, mightn't you? Nothing too major, perhaps a birthday cake or something like that. But if you haven't told them, you might think, oh, it's too late now, or not the right time, and a little bit of a compromise, and then another little bit of a compromise, and then before long, what have we done? We've tried to make ourselves look just like them, haven't we? And so that's the danger of that. So isn't it much better just to tell them all about our wonderful hope from day one? And hopefully some of them will listen, which is really good. But even if they don't, from that moment on, they'll know, oh, that's a Jehovah's Witness. You've got to behave yourself then, don't you? So it just helps us, doesn't it? Protects us by keeping our eyes on the prize, telling everybody about our wonderful hope. We won't end up struck with this missile of fear of So missile 1 was?
Entertainment.
Unholy entertainment. Missile 2? Immorality. Number 3? Very bad. But actually, one way of protecting ourselves from all of those is to keep our eyes on the prize. So let's just conclude by coming back to our soldier. Okay, so nice and close together again. Right, so quick run through from the feet, and thinking of Ephesians chapter 6, so feet shod with the
Good news.
good news, very good. Loins girded about
Truth.
truth, okay. Over here, he's resting on his...
Large shield.
on the side here, yeah, this is a large... How do we know it's a large shield?
Looks like a door.
Okay, like a door, the Greek word door, therios, okay. So that's very good. Breastplate of righteousness. And he should have on, but he hasn't got here, but he should have his helmet of salvation. Very good. So those are all the defensive items. But there is just one offensive item that we've not mentioned, which of course is the
Sword of the Spirit.
sword of the Spirit, which we link to
The Word of God.
the Bible, God's Word. But come a bit closer, I want you to see that this guy's actually got 2 swords. He's got this nice big long sharp 2-edged sword on that side, and on this side he's got this little dagger thing, okay? So which one do you think Paul's talking about? This nice big long sharp 2-edged sword, or this little dagger over here?
Both of them?
That one? That nice big long sharp 2-edged sword? No. No, the word he uses is the word for this little one. That's a bit odd, isn't it?
Yes.
This is in Ephesians 6, of course. Okay, I know in Hebrews 4 he does talk about that. But Ephesians 6, it's this one. Now let's just think why that's so effective, why that's correct. First of all, if the soldier is using this little sword, where is his enemy? In close. When you're out in the field using your little sword, where is your household? I'm not calling them an enemy, but where are they?
Very close.
In close. You've got to get in close, haven't you, with this? But this is the thing to think about, really. How many mistakes can the soldier make if he's using this little sword? Not many. In fact, none. If he wants to walk away, he cannot make any mistakes. This opponent is right there. Everything else, he's got something to fall back on, isn't it? But now, with this little sword, makes a mistake, he's gone. He's dead. So, out of all his equipment, what does he have to be most skilled with?
Sword.
The little sword. Okay? Do you get the point? Are you skilled with your little sword? The organisation once said, you know, we should be able to skillfully strip away the falsehood and expose the truth using God's word. Now that does take skill, doesn't it? And well, where are we going to get those skills? Where is this soldier going to get to be so skilled with his little sword?
Practice.
Yeah, practice. Well, just think of the soldier to begin with, though. It's in training, isn't it? It's with the rest of the soldiers in the army camp, or training where else for the soldier? He can't train at home, can't he? He cannot train in battle, can he? He cannot make one mistake with this, otherwise he's dead, isn't it? So for the soldier, he has to be skilled before he gets to the battle, doesn't he? And that means a lot of work, training in the army camps, and of course at home. Now you see the application straight away. How are we going to get skilled? Well, of course, we're going to be training at home, doing things like
Personal study.
personal study, daily Bible reading, all of that, and training at the meetings, isn't it? But lives depend on it just as much as his life depended on how he used that sword. Lives depend on how he used his sword, isn't it? So are you skilled with your little sword? Am I skilled with my little sword? We need to ask ourselves that, because it's such an important question. Can we see the effect of this illustration? A lot there for us to think about, isn't it? But just putting it all together, really, if we get involved with what Jehovah's doing, we become part of his army. We'll need to keep our eyes on the prize in order to survive, in order to stay faithful, remain to the end. But just think about the rewards. I mean, they had a wonderful reward to look forward to, the prestige, the honor, the share of the spoils. But how about us? Oh, just so much more than all of that. That wonderful paradise there. And in fact, there was no guarantees with this. But for us, well, we can join the army, the only army completely guaranteed to win before it starts. Why wouldn't we want to be part of that? So, take our position in the congregation, faithful in Jehovah's service, all our pieces of the suit of armour on, then we'll get hold of that prize. We just keep on going, keep our eyes on the prize. So can we encourage you to keep up the good work? And just mention finally that the material that we use on this tour and on all of our tours comes from Jehovah's organisation. It's not the British Museum helping us keep our eyes on the prize. It's Jehovah's organisation. Just nice to illustrate these things. So I hope you have a good trip home to wherever home is, all around different places around the world. And then come back and see us again.